It is a dramatic day in former President Trump's criminal hush money case as Stormy Daniels is on the stand testifying as a key witness. Daniels has been detailing her first meeting with former President Trump, the sexual encounter she says they had, including revealing testimony about the days and years after that alleged sexual encounter as well. Prosecutors argue Trump orchestrated a $130,000 payment to the adult film actress ahead of the 2016 election in exchange for her silence about that alleged affair, and then falsified documents to cover up those payments. Former President Trump denies the affair and the charges. I want to bring in ABC News senior investigative correspondent Aaron Katersky outside that courthouse, along with ABC News executive editorial producer John Santucci and senior counsel at Cozen O'Connor law firm Jerry Goldfeder. Aaron, what's the latest from court, and what do you make of Stormy Daniels' testimony so far?
It has captured the attention of everyone in that courtroom, even if Donald Trump himself and his son Eric, who's sitting in the gallery behind him, are doing their best to look disinterested and look away from Stormy Daniels. The jury is certainly captivated by her description of what she says was a sexual encounter between her and Donald Trump back in 2006 in a large hotel suite at Harrah's in Lake Tahoe, California. Stormy Daniels said that she had been there as part of an adult film production company sponsoring a hole at a golf tournament, and she described in vivid detail, almost too much detail for the judge at times, who asked prosecutors to move it along, how she was in the suite. She remembered being in the bathroom and seeing a leather toiletry case. She remembered Old Spice and Pert Plus. And then when she walked out of the bathroom, she said she remembered seeing Donald Trump there on the bed. Were you threatened? Prosecutor Susan Hoffinger asked her. She said, well, there was a power imbalance and he was sort of blocking the way, but she said she didn't feel threatened. Eventually the two had sex, she said, but as she began to describe that encounter, the sexual encounter, that's when the defense objected and the judge sustained the objection.
Jerry, Stormy Daniels has gone into a lot of detail here, as Aaron explained, not only about what happened that day on the golf course, that night at the hotel room, and also what happened thereafter. How is the defense going to cross-examine her on this and try to challenge her?
Well, they're going to try to make her into a liar, but I don't know how they're going to succeed. The level of detail is it's exquisite detail. And it sounds very believable. I'm not in the courtroom, but from all the reports, it seems as if she described their encounter with such vivid detail that it has to be believable. The room, the conversations, what he was wearing, what he wasn't wearing. It seems to me that the defense has a very difficult job. But look, the heart of the matter is that at a certain point when he was running for president, he decided that he could not have her tell her story. It was right after the Access Hollywood tape when they were crazed about making sure that American voters would not hear about this tawdry affair. And if the defense wants to take the tack of trying to disprove what she's saying, good luck to them.
And John, we're also hearing some interesting testimony. Again, Daniels is on the stand now as we speak. She said after this whole encounter that her life was amazing. In her words, she got a raise, she directed more films, she broke into mainstream films, she had a kid. But she's saying it was actually in 2011 that she first had another interaction related to Trump where someone told her to stop talking about it.
So we've heard this story before, but not obviously on a stand in a courtroom. So what Stormy Daniels is now speaking about, Diane, is that in 2011, she gave an interview to In Touch magazine where she talked about her encounter, her relationship with Donald Trump, her interaction. Didn't go much further than that, kept it very 30,000 feet. However, she's talking about an incident now in June of 2011 in Las Vegas. She was in a parking lot, apparently coming out of a Mommy and Me class with her child. And she says a man approached her and threatened her to not continue telling her story about her encounter with Donald Trump. The man allegedly said, according to Daniels, quote, "He told me not to say anything at all, and I was scared." Now, according to our team, Stormy Daniels apparently getting emotional on the stand while recounting this. You know, she's been wearing glasses, according to our team, raising them up, not to get them foggy as she's becoming, you know, pretty emotionally upset. And now it's also interesting that jurors heard about a blog post during the testimony of Keith Davidson, who sent a cease and desist letter to the blog, getting the post removed, about that exchange, about that sexual encounter with Trump. So again, that's 2011. So let's just, you know, bring the timeline out to everybody here. 2006, the sexual encounter. 2007, the last time Donald Trump and Stormy Daniels see each other. 2011, the magazine interview, this encounter with a man approaching her in a parking lot, basically saying, stop talking about Donald Trump. We are building closer and closer to the crescendo, if you will, of 2016. Keith Davidson, Michael Cohen, catching and killing her story.
And Jerry, up until now, the judge has warned the prosecution, particularly when talking about the sexual encounter, that we don't need all the details here, right, to sort of slow down in that respect. How important are the details to this part of the story? What happened after and now as she starts to try to tell her story, and when she says she was first told to keep her mouth shut?
Well, these details present a texture for the jury to have a feel of her truth-telling, of her recollection of all of her encounters with Donald Trump. So that's the reason why she's being asked about all these details. But the judge really doesn't want to go over a line that where the details become so prejudicial that it's unfair to the defendant. And it's not a bright line. So the judge has to make a determination when there's an objection that there's a little too much detail in her stories. But there's certainly enough in her testimony to demonstrate that she's not making this up on the stand, and it appears that she never made this up at all, that her recollection of all these details that the prosecution has elicited from her is truthful. And that being the case, that's really what the takeaway is by the jury. If the jury does decide that they do believe her, then it becomes important in terms of the catch and kill scheme. But even if they don't believe all the details, the catch and kill scheme that Trump and David Pecker and the others conspired to have so that her story won't become public, whether the jury believes that or not, they did do that, and they did pay her. And essentially, that's really the most important fact that that the jury needs to take away in terms of what the prosecution is trying to prove.
And Brian, excuse me, and Aaron, she's talking a little more now about trying to get her story out. Walk us through the latest from this testimony and how Stormy Daniels is describing all of this.
This is all the aftermath of the sexual encounter that she spoke about with Donald Trump, and how she is trying to own her own narrative here against what she described as this pressure to stay quiet even before the 2016 election, sort of a prelude. I wonder if some of the details, how some of those details, especially of the alleged sexual encounter, are playing with the jury. The way Stormy Daniels spoke and the way Susan Hoffinger, the prosecutor, elicited some of the details about what went on in that hotel room in 2006, it almost made it sound like you were listening to a victim of a sex crime testify in court. And that's nowhere near the allegation here. But that's what it sounded like to me when I was listening. And I wonder how that ultimately does play with the jury. I expect the defense on cross-examination, when it comes, to home in on that, to reiterate that this was a willing encounter, and that Stormy Daniels knows nothing about the hush payment other than she received it. She doesn't know anything about how it was booked in the general ledger of the Trump Organization as a legal expense, and why or why not that may be pertinent.
And John, now she's talking a little bit more about how we went from that encounter in the parking lot after the In Touch magazine interview to when she started shopping her story around.
Yeah, so what Daniels just testified on the stand, Diane, is that she authorized her agent at the time to shop around her story. This was in 2016. Daniels just testified, quote, "My motivation wasn't money, it was to get the story out." She goes on to say it was motivated out of fear, not money. Susan Hoffinger, of course, the lead prosecutor in the case, asking her, why didn't you ask for more money, as opposed to $130,000, which Cohen offered, and she responded, because I didn't care about the money. Now, as Aaron just noted, I think the reality of it is that Stormy Daniels' knowledge and information in real time is starting to come, to a close, if you will, right? Because at the end of the day, she just wanted to get the story out there. That didn't happen. She took the money and was silenced for a period of time. Eventually, obviously, the story did come out there, and we know Daniels very famously gave a very big interview to 60 Minutes where she did detail all well after the 2016 election, to be clear.
Well, now she's detailing it on the stand. Jerry, what do prosecutors ultimately need to prove with this witness? What are the key points that they're going to try to hit on and make sure to hit on with Stormy Daniels?
That she was paid $130,000 to keep quiet, period. End of story. The reason why she wanted to get the story out is kind of irrelevant. All the relationship she described with Trump that included this tryst is kind of irrelevant. The fact that he took her up to Trump Tower and introduced her to everyone because he was comfortable with her, that's also irrelevant. The only thing that really matters is that this real live person who seems to have a pretty good recollection of all the details of that encounter, that this real live person wanted to tell the story for whatever reason, and they paid her to shut up. And that was the triggering point for the payment, for the cover-up, and then the prosecution needs to move on to demonstrate that the reason that Trump did this, his intent, was to commit or conceal another crime, which is to influence the election by unlawful means. And that's really the heart of the testimony. All this other detail that we have, that the prosecution has elicited from her, is just to demonstrate that she's a real live person who's telling the truth. That being said, she was paid to be quiet. And what are the reasons she was what was the main reason she was paid to be quiet? It had to do with the election. That's the goal of the prosecution. That's what the jury needs to believe in order to convict Donald Trump.
John, what are you hearing from court, just in terms of the dynamics, the jury, former President Trump, and his son in the courtroom today as well?
Everyone is just sitting there, I mean, I'd hate to use the word, but almost like stupefied by it all. I think just taking it all in. I think the jury has consistently done one thing today, which is not take their eyes off Stormy Daniels, as Donald Trump has done the exact opposite, not look at Stormy Daniels at all. We know that in the front row of this courtroom, right behind Donald Trump, Eric Trump is sitting there, and like father, like son, both have not looked at Stormy Daniels, according to our team. Both have repeatedly looked down. Donald Trump's body turned every which way possible to not look at her. I do think that's why we saw the sketch of the courtroom earlier. That's one thing that, you have to be a little careful of with some of these sketches. Everything in that photo clearly accurate, right? Stormy on the stand, Susan Hoffinger questioning them. We see the sketch right there of Donald Trump and Stormy Daniels in that now infamous photo of the two together in 2006, right before the sexual encounter happened at that golf club in Lake Tahoe. But here's the only thing wrong with that picture. Donald Trump's eyes at Stormy Daniels in that picture, not what's happening in reality. He is doing everything he can, Diane, to not look at Stormy Daniels right now.